Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, we're diving right into a seriously fascinating slice of history today. We are unpacking the ultimate cat-and-mouse game of 19th century museum security. We're going to look at the official colonial reports of the Lahore Central Museum, specifically going from the 1870s through to the 1890s. And honestly, what we find in these dusty archives is just a thrilling timeline. We're talking thefts, security breaches, and the rapid evolution of protective measures.
To start off, I want you to just picture a total logistical nightmare. Imagine you're the one tasked with securing thousands of tiny, completely priceless items. Think gold coins, ancient jade, delicate fossils, and you have to protect them from massive, totally unregulated crowds. It's practically an impossible task, right? Especially when you remember this is way before the era of security cameras, laser tripwires, or even, standardized display cases. So how exactly do you balance open, educational public access with the absolute, non-negotiable necessity of keeping the institution secure?
Well, to understand the problem, you have to look at the sheer scale of the crowds we're talking about here. It is absolutely staggering. In just the 1880 to 1881 reporting year alone, the museum saw nearly 265,000 visitors. There was a slight dip to around 183,000 the next year, but then it shot right back up to over 251,000 by 1883. And these weren't just your standard local sightseers taking a stroll. A massive chunk of these crowds were actually traders doing business in the city and pilgrims just passing through Lahore on their way to Hardwar. Managing this wild volume of transient foot traffic, it made early security efforts pretty much impossible. So let's wind the clock back a bit to our first chronological era, the 1870s. This was, quite frankly, a baseline of innocence, where the approach to security was, incredibly naive.
Section 1. The Era of Open Doors. Museum Security in the 1870s.
So, the duties of the early museum attendants back in the late 1870s were astonishingly relaxed. Visitors were just allowed to come and go freely anytime between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. And the attendants, they were basically acting like librarians. Their main job was literally just to hush loud rural visitors because they thought a loud conversational volume might give a bad impression of local manners. They were explicitly instructed not to unnecessarily control the crowds, just, vaguely stop people from physically handling the exhibits. They were entirely unprepared for actual, deliberate criminals. And obviously, as those massive crowds kept growing, this super naive system began to show its very first cracks.
Section 2. Petty Crimes and Pickpockets. Early Signs of Trouble.
The chaotic nature of early museum crime is perfectly captured during the 1878 to 1879 reporting year. So the museum was completely packed to the gills with massive, chaotic crowds for the Muharram Day festival. But guess what the only item stolen that entire day was? A simple bamboo tube. And its value was just 2 annas. That's it. This stark contrast really highlights that, at this stage anyway, the museum wasn't being targeted by master thieves pulling off grand heists. These were literally just spontaneous crimes of opportunity, by people shuffling along in the crowd.
Now, by the 1880 to 1881 season, the infractions had shifted slightly, but they still stayed pretty petty. For example, a thief was caught just nabbing shoes that visitors had left at the entrance, and a pickpocket got apprehended by a museum constable. So the key takeaway here is that the museum was basically just dealing with common street crimes spilling over from the city streets right into their entrance hall. They weren't really facing coordinated attacks on the actual collections themselves. But, spoiler alert, that era of innocence abruptly ends right about now. The museum's vulnerabilities were about to be suddenly and dramatically exposed.
Section 3. The Fossil Bone Break-In. The Crimes Escalate.
The rapid escalation of these incidents is just striking. Think about it. We go from a stolen bamboo tube in 1878 to minor pickpockets in 1880 to a sudden violent escalation in September 1882. The museum was no longer just dealing with opportunistic visitors wandering in during the day. Oh no, they were now facing determined criminals who were totally willing to cause actual property damage under the cover of darkness.
The 1882 to 1883 official report captures this shift perfectly. I'll just read you the quote directly. At night, a window opening into the geological section was broken and a fossil bone was taken from the case beneath it. You can practically picture the scene, right? The smashed glass sparkling in the moonlight, this violated display case, and a priceless piece of natural history just vanishing into the Lahore night. This was a huge deal. It forced the museum authorities to finally pay serious attention to the physical protection of their collections. But even with that massive wake-up call, the worst was actually yet to come. The stakes were about to reach their absolute peak on July 14, 1884.
Section 4. The Jade Dagger Heist. The Professional Thief Strikes.
So, on this specific day, a truly priceless artifact, a jade dagger hilt that was beautifully set with garnets, vanished into thin air. And this wasn't just any random object. It had been specially presented to the museum by the Punjab government. And the most alarming part? It was snatched directly from a locked display case in broad daylight right under the noses of the museum staff. I mean, this was a devastating, incredibly embarrassing breach of security for everyone involved.
And if you look at the resulting 1884 to 1885 report, it contains this really chilling realization from the authorities. They formally noted that the theft was, quote, probably carried out by a professional thief rather than by ordinary visitors. And that realization? That changes absolutely everything. The institution finally recognized they were no longer dealing with some noisy pilgrim lifting a 2-ana bamboo tube, but a sophisticated, dedicated criminal element that was intentionally targeting their most valuable, locked treasures. So, the big question is, how do you fight back against a professional thief when you're a totally open public institution? Well, it was time for a complete, ground-up overhaul.
Section 5. Fortifying the museum, the institutional response.
Immediately following that jade dagger heist, the curator, a guy named J.L. Kipling, and the colonial administration executed a really strict 3-step countermeasure strategy. Step 1, they went in and renewed all the locks on literally every single case containing valuables. Out with the old, in with the new. Step 2, they strategically repositioned their most valuable objects into direct, unobstructed sightlines so they couldn't be hidden from view. And step 3, which was the real game changer, they didn't just rely on those hushing, librarian-style attendants anymore. They stationed actual police guards for direct, constant observation of those specific high-value cases.
If you compare the two eras, the absolute transformation of the museum's whole operational mindset is just stark. It's night and day. In the 1870s, their focus was merely noise control, relying on unarmed casual attendants. By the 1890s, the focus had entirely, 100%, shifted to theft prevention, backed by armed police guards and newly engineered locks. The museum had literally evolved from this casual, open house vibe into a heavily fortified cultural institution.
And if you're wondering if these intense new measures actually worked, well, let me give you a number: 4,501. On a single day, specifically November 30th, 1894, which was the day of the Viceregal Darbar, exactly 4,501 people passed through the museum's turnstiles. The building was absolutely packed to the brim. Yet the official reports proudly note that on that specific day, and actually for that entire reporting year, there was not a single theft, not one incident of damage. The new fortified system held strong.
Which brings us to the final thought I really want to leave you with today. Every single time you walk into a modern museum and you see that thick, reinforced glass, those dedicated security guards standing in the corner, and the strategic lighting overhead, those aren't just modern inventions. They are the direct, evolutionary descendants of historical incidents just like that 1882 fossil break-in and the 1884 jade dagger heist in Lahore. So the next time you're standing there viewing a priceless artifact, ask yourself this: how are we continuing to balance the beautiful ideal of open public access with the harsh, everyday reality of institutional security? It is a fascinating cat and mouse game, and honestly, it's one that never truly ends. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gave you a brand new perspective on the hidden history of our museums.